Don't come back home. I'm with her. Do whatever you want with the baby. Over my husband's voice, I hear the laughter of a young woman. She must be the one he's cheating with. Jason, you're choosing to spend time with me. Obviously, I'm way better than this old lady. Plus, I don't want any babies. They're noisy and wrinkly. I don't see what's cute about them at all. The audacity of this woman, insulting not just me but my baby too. I'm trembling with rage. Trying to keep calm, I respond, okay, thinking they are done for. Thinking you'll regret this, I muster the strength in my still weak postpartum body to stand firmly and glare at my husband. Jason, are you really okay with this? Living without me and our baby? I ask for confirmation one last time. I don't want to talk, but I need to be sure. Yeah, I even got the divorce papers. I filled out my part. Just sign your section and consult a lawyer. I nod in understanding? Then this is goodbye forever. I'm crying, but they are tears of relief. It's finally over. I'll never return to this house. I'm Erica Johnson, 32, currently on maternity leave from a multinational corporation. I'm still helping out with remote work, almost as much as before my leave. I spend fulfilling days taking care of my daughter and working. I never thought I'd find it easier without my husband. We met at a friend's wedding after party. Fresh from a breakup and feeling lonely, we quickly got close and married before I turned 30. Love is blind indeed. After marrying, I slowly learned about his infidelity and drinking issues. He often spent nights out drinking and partying. Even though it was within his budget, I couldn't comprehend it so early in our marriage. We're newlyweds. I want a sweet married life. I told him fed up. His unapologetic reply was, "What are you talking about now? We used to drink and go clubbing together. You knew I liked drinking and that I'm popular with the ladies." Indeed, he was popular. He was kind and attentive, giving expensive chocolates for birthdays and lending an ear to girls' troubles. He was nice to everyone, including men at work. He'd always get calls on his phone at home, from both men and women. He'd leave me to reply to texts. Even if we were chatting or watching a movie, I wished he'd at least put his phone on silent when we were together. His constant texting was sigh-inducing. Consequently, people would say things like, "You're lucky to have such a kind husband," which could be jealousy on my part, but I couldn't help wanting him to be kinder to me. He was always getting invitations. His once-weekly outings turned into weekend activities, too. His phone was always buzzing with invites. Sometimes even from night workers asking him to accompany them. Sometimes he'd come home smelling like perfume. I confronted him angrily, but he brushed it off, saying the girls at the bar got too close. There's nothing more to it. No matter how much I asked him to stop, he never did, and I eventually gave up. When he was home, he'd help with chores and be nice to me, balancing out my frustration with his philandering. Then I found out I was pregnant. I wanted to enjoy our time as a couple a bit longer, but the thought of having a baby was exciting. When I told him, he responded, "Really? Are you sure it's mine? Not that you cheated, but it's hard to believe." I was hoping for more excitement from him. I expected him to cheer. And what did he mean by questioning if it's his? I've only been commuting between work and home, never even having meals with male colleagues. Jason, aren't you happy? I didn't expect to get pregnant so soon, but I'm thrilled at the thought of our baby. I asked, worried. No, it's just a slip of the tongue. Of course I'm happy. You're honest, Erica. I know you wouldn't mess around with other guys. He seemed to be hastily covering up his words. It even sounded like he was mocking me for not dating other men. I felt distrustful of my husband's words, but I chose to take his belief in my seriousness as a positive and stopped arguing. A few days later, he seemed to accept my pregnancy, started helping more actively around the house, concerned about my health. I was grateful for his help as I couldn't move as before due to morning sickness. However, he didn't cut back on his nights out at bars and clubs. His lifestyle remained unchanged. I felt a growing gap between us as he showed no signs of change. I had heard that women become mothers while carrying their children, but men become fathers as they raise their babies. I optimistically hoped my husband would become more family-oriented once our baby was born. I switched to remote work, allowing me to work more comfortably from home. As my morning sickness eased, I returned to my busy routine of housework and my job. But as my belly grew, my movements slowed and there were more things I couldn't do. My husband, saying he didn't want to burden me, began going out again. It was nice to prepare just what I liked, but I really wanted to have slow conversations about our coming baby. I didn't want to argue like we did early in our marriage, so I turned a blind eye to the women's perfume and messages on social media. Perhaps I was fooling myself into thinking it was just harmless fun. Always the optimist, I convinced myself that even if he was a playboy now, he would become a good father as our child grew. Looking back, he might have been laughing at my naivety. Maybe even messaging his affair partner right in front of me. I never thought about such things, just went on with my daily life. One day a neighbor asked, "Lately, I've seen your husband walking with a younger woman. She dresses very young." I replied, "I don't have a sister. That must be his sister. I'll ask him about it." I get along with my sister-in-law and often chat with her on social media. We had exchanged messages the day before, but she hadn't mentioned anything. Could my husband be cheating? I had thought he was just being sociable and playful, but maybe it was something else. Pretending to be outgoing, he might be dating someone specific. It was my first suspicion, but I couldn't shake off the anxiety that it might be true. I made several phone calls. That night, my husband returned home late as usual. Holding back my urge to confront him, I only said, "Our baby will be here soon. Try to spend more time at home." I was experiencing frequent contractions and wanted his encouragement if labor started. The thought of having my alcohol-scented husband nearby was embarrassing and disheartening. He muttered, "I understand," and headed to the bathroom. As I walked to the bedroom, a warm liquid flowed around my feet. It took a moment, but I realized my water had broken. I tried to wake my husband, but he wouldn't stir from his drunken sleep. I called a taxi, crying, and went to the hospital in the middle of the night. The next morning, I saw a message from my husband on my phone, but I was in no condition to respond. I called him after safely delivering our baby that night. He said, "Congratulations. That's great. I suddenly have a business trip tomorrow, so I can't visit. Can I ask your mom to help with things?" His response lacked any excitement about our newborn. Normally one would visit their baby, even if it's late. Exhausted, I calmed myself, looking at my peacefully sleeping daughter. My mother was rushing here to see her granddaughter, so I talked to her when she arrived. 4 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. My husband's responses were vague despite my daily messages, so I assumed he was busy with work and social commitments. I asked my mom to pick me up and went home. The concierge congratulated me on my childbirth as I showed off my daughter. As I opened the door to my home, I heard a sweet female voice inside. I almost dropped my baby in shock. Seeing my mom's face, I could tell she was pale with shock. I said, "Jason, I'm home. What are you doing?" My mom chimed in, "No need to ask, I can see for myself." Price. Anticipating trouble, my mom stayed at the entrance, holding my baby. "Why are you back? Aren't you supposed to be discharged tomorrow?" My husband retorted, trying to deflect and getting angry. "I messaged and called you several times. You must have been too busy enjoying yourself with your phone off." I thought back to the day the neighbor mentioned seeing him, never imagining it would come to catching them in the act. I felt nauseous. His cold voice cut through. "Don't come back home, I'm with her. Do whatever you want with the baby." Overlapping his voice, I could hear a young woman's laughter. It was the voice of his mistress. "Jason, you're choosing to spend time with me. Obviously, I'm way better than this old lady. Plus, I don't want any babies. They're noisy and wrinkly. I don't see what's cute about them at all." The nerve of this woman, insulting not just me but my baby too. I was shaking with anger. Trying to keep calm, I responded, okay. Thinking they were done for, I struggled to stand firmly and glare at my husband, my body still weak from childbirth. "Jason, are you really okay with this? Living without me and our child?" I needed one last confirmation. "Yeah. I even got the divorce papers. I filled out my part. Just sign your section and consult a lawyer." I nodded in understanding. Then this is goodbye forever. I was crying, but they were tears of relief. It was finally over. I would never return to this house. After that, I stayed with my mom. She said, "It's like coming home for the birth. Don't worry about it." So I could rely on her without feeling guilty. I had no financial worries. My salary from the company was more than enough, allowing me to take a comfortable maternity leave. My dad was also planning to soon to see his grandchild. My parents usually live overseas and stay in this house in the States when they have business here. Gradually getting used to taking care of the baby and feeling better, I started the divorce proceedings. I had already been preparing, moving my belongings out bit by bit before giving birth. The lawyer assured me they would handle everything so that it wouldn't be disadvantageous to me. Just when I was about to contact him, I received a call from my husband. "Hey, what's this about?" I asked. "I was told to get out of this house." He sounded panicked. "Well, that makes sense. That place belongs to my company. If I'm not living there, you have to move out." To move out, I work for a multinational real estate company. They allowed me to rent an available property at a low cost, which I was not aware of. They showed me around, and we chose this place, but I never realized it was owned by my company. We had looked at several apartments with a real estate agent, who also did not realize it was my company's property. I should have been clearer. It is our property, and they rented it to us at a discounted rate. Normally, the rent would be at least $4,000 a month. I could hear him gasping on the phone. $4,000? He exclaimed incredulously. "You're kidding!" It was true. They gave me a special deal because it was me, and it included utilities for $3,000. However, they have now stopped deducting it from my salary. In the background, I could hear his girlfriend's confused voice. She probably thought he was paying for the apartment and everything else. She never imagined her current lifestyle was unsustainable without me. "Wait a minute," he said slowly. "If I pay that much rent, I'll barely have half my salary left." He was starting to realize his situation. "By the way, I've been storing your leftover stuff. You'll need to pay me for storage. Let's start with $10,000. If you don't get it soon, there will be interest. I'll start counting until all the stuff is out of this place." I was dismayed to realize how cunning my husband was. I had moved all of our clothes and essentials here, but not all of the furniture. "I'll be there right away." "Just wait," I said, hanging up the phone. I quickly told my mom about the conversation, and we decided to return to our former home. Of course she would come with me. I contacted the lawyer and a few other places before leaving my mom's house. About half an hour later, we arrived at our former home. My husband, looking grumpy, showed up. "You're back. Come in quickly," he said. My mom and I entered the house together. The inside was a mess. I'm not very meticulous, but I had tidied up the house in anticipation of bringing the baby home. Now it was unrecognizable, with beer cans, plastic bottles, empty meal boxes, and trash bags overflowing from the garbage can. Despite having a dishwasher, dirty dishes were piled high in the sink. "It's tough without you. Won't you come back?" Jason started. "But you told me not to come back, Jason," I glared at him. Then the lawyer and the movers arrived. "Thank you for coming. Movers, please take most of the appliances. Most of them were originally bought by me. My husband only had old stuff from his student days, so I replaced them gradually." Gradually, I asked them what they meant. "How am I supposed to live?" My husband exclaimed, shocked by the movers covering and preparing to take the items. "Hey, what are you doing? How are we supposed to live?" His mistress emerged from the back of the house, yawning and looking around sleepily. "Well, I bought most of the things here. Jason just contributed to the living expenses. The rest he spent as he pleased. So if I take these, you'll have to get your own," I said with a smile to his mistress. "The lawyer will explain the details. If I take care of my daughter, Jason will need to pay child support. So, Jason, you will be asked for child support. And about the storage fee for these appliances you mentioned on the phone, since you were using them, we'll call it even." Their faces drained of color at his words. "Also, the rent and utilities payments for this house have stopped, so you'll soon receive an eviction notice. The water, electricity, and gas will be cut off as well. You're moving out, so you'll have to pay for that." They were shocked to realize Jason had to pay child support and about $10,000 for rent and utilities, blaming each other for the payment. I had hired a private investigator as soon as I began suspecting my husband of cheating. Reflecting on it, that was the most difficult time, especially being pregnant. The shock was terrifying. It might even have caused my water to break. I didn't have time to investigate myself, so while in the hospital for childbirth, I called the concierge and asked about my husband. Reluctantly, they revealed they had seen him returning with other women several times. I also obtained security camera footage through my company, showing the two of them getting cozy in the elevator. Plus, the investigator provided photos of them entering a hotel. I made sure they couldn't escape. I had been waiting for the right moment to confront my husband, and since he showed his true colors, I decided to deal with them calmly and thoroughly, like today. As my belongings were moved out and Jason and his mistress argued loudly, I sat on the sofa, which would be moved last. Suddenly, the door burst open and a large figure collided with Jason, sending him flying across the room. We were all stunned when he was thrown again. "What's going on?" Jason stood up just as this large figure, my father, started shouting loudly. Then my brother entered. Both my father and brother are tall and well-built, almost bear-like. My biological father died in a traffic accident shortly after I was born. My mom, while working hard in real estate, met my current father, a former American football player. They started dating when he flirted with her, and they remarried when I was in middle school. I initially struggled to bond with him, but seeing how much he cared for my mom, I fully supported their marriage. Thus I have a half-brother. I was happily surprised to see my father and brother, since I hadn't seen them since I got married. When my father and brother, with their faces red with anger, started yelling, the intimidation was immense. My husband lost all color in his face, sweating profusely and trembling while listening to them. His mistress tried to sneak out of the house but was caught and brought back by my mother. My husband couldn't get a word in against their yelling. Then my in-laws arrived. Yes, before coming here, I had contacted the lawyer, the movers, and my in-laws. They were unaware of the situation and had been looking forward to seeing their grandchild. When they learned about their son's actions, the joy of meeting their grandchild vanished, replaced by fury. "Jason, what on earth are you doing? We've been eagerly waiting to see our grandchild, and you're living here with your mistress," my father-in-law exclaimed, beyond disappointed and at a loss for words. He apologized to me, dragging his son. My mother-in-law nearly fainted. With a triumphant look, I said, "Jason, it's enough. I have my daughter, and lots of hope. I can look forward to life. Just make sure to pay child support. You can keep living in this house if you can afford the rent." When I confirmed my husband's affair, I was emotionally devastated, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? I realized I had to protect this child and show her only the beautiful things in life, trying to forget my anger and hatred. So I said my piece and watched as my father and brother punished him, deciding to let go of the past. Sensing my mood, my father and brother hugged me, and we left the apartment together with my mother and baby. Later, my husband, of course, moved out of the apartment. He's living in a more modest place now. When his mistress heard he was moving out of the luxury apartment, she dumped him. It seemed she was only after a handsome guy living in a high-end place. When he asked her to believe in him and move to the apartment, she said, "When the money goes, so do I," and left him. If he lives in a nice apartment and buys her various things, she'll be with him. But if he doesn't, she doesn't want him. It was a typical "if it's not beneficial, it's disposable" attitude. Her parents sent an apology letter, but I never received a direct apology from her. It made me think how cunning she can be. As for my husband, his life at work changed drastically. No one invites him out, and he has no women to confide in. Even if invited, he can't afford to go out due to his debt for child support. He had his fun. Now it's time for him to work hard. I could have continued living with my mother, but my father and brother were there to support me and help me move on. But my father invited me to go overseas, and I decided to accept. I can work remotely, which will be great for my daughter to grow up in nature. She will learn about a different culture and have many diverse experiences. As I relax at my father's house, I am contemplating my future. I am excited for new adventures and am heading to the park with my daughter today.